Hi guys and welcome back to Irony Completed. So today I thought I'd talk to you guys about my favourite comic books because I very rarely talk about comic books on this channel, although I do book videos and I have mentioned a few comic books before, like in my last book club video and I talked about Scott Pilgrim. I thought that I would talk to you guys about my favourite comic book series, standalone comic books and just all that kind of thing. So without further ado, let's get on to some of my favourite comic books. I should probably get them in a pile. So first I thought we would talk about kind of light-hearted comics, comic books that are suitable for children, comic books that are a little bit more fun or short, and just kind of you can dip in and out of them, they're not so serious subject matter, or like I said, they're more suitable for kids. I think one of the most iconic comic books of all time, and definitely one of my favourite kind of comic strip series, is Peanuts. I think Peanuts is obviously a beloved cartoon series. The TV series is obviously very famous as well as the comic books, but I think that the comic strips are absolutely amazing. My dad has a collection of these hardback books and they have specific years worth of comics, so this is 1969 to 1970, but my dad has them right from the beginning all the way through to probably around the same time as this. Charles M. Schulz is an amazing comic book artist. The Peanuts characters are iconic and Snoopy is just one of those characters that will forever be remembered. Like, he's one of those characters that stands alone outside of the comic book series as well, which is very interesting. And I just think that this is a really nice way into comic books if you kind of prefer something short or if you want to be able to dip in and out of it really lightly. I definitely recommend Peanuts. And the second one that I would recommend that's a little bit more lighthearted, maybe a little bit more suitable for kids or just a little bit more fun and childish, is Asterix and Obelix. So the Asterix comic books were written by Rene Goscinny and illustrated by Albert Uderzo, I can't pronounce that name, I'm sorry. And I have a whole collection of these thin ones. They're just one story in a comic book. I have 10 of these little hardback books with different comics and stuff inside. So this is Asterix the Gaul, which is the first one ever, but there's lots of fun stories, Asterix and the Goths. There's loads of really fun stories. Like I said, they're very light-hearted, they're very silly, it's a humorous comic, and it's definitely something that all ages can enjoy. Kind of falls in the same category as like Peanuts or Tintin, or just one of those things that's really fun that kids and adults alike will love. And again, it's kind of one of those timeless comic books that has definitely remained culturally significant, and I love these. I love them. I've read them all many times. They're some of my favourites. Now let's talk about some great standalone comic books that aren't necessarily for kids but are standalones and you don't have to wade through an entire series to enjoy them. This is Mercury. This is by Hope Larson, one of my favourite female comic book artists. I have two standalone comic books by Hope Larson, this and Chiggers. This is a little bit more fantasy and it's a lot about kind of remembering a past life and maybe your ancestry, and it's a little bit more mystical, has a little bit of like a fantasy magical element to it. And the other standalone comic book that I have by Hope Larson is Chiggers, which is much more based in real life. I absolutely love this comic book. I think it's a really great standalone read. It's really fun and really interesting, and it has lots of fantasy elements without being a complete fantasy comic. It's not 100% pure dragons, aliens, outer space. It's kind of still based in the real world, and like I said, kind of remembering about history and past lives and your ancestry and what kind of made you the person that you are today. I think Hope Larson is a really great comic book artist and you should definitely check out some of her work. I feel like female comic book artists are very often overlooked and she is definitely one of the best. Now this one is a really tiny comic book and it's become very popular on Tumblr. I've seen a lot of images of it on Tumblr. This is Sophie by Philippa Rice. People often post little panels from this. It's just such an adorable little comic book about relationships, and this is very fun and lighthearted. My dad got me this a few years ago for Christmas, but I think this would be an absolutely adorable Valentine's Day present for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or a just really nice birthday present for a romantic partner. I think it's so cute. It's all about a couple and their relationship, and it's very silly and funny and just very adorable. And I couldn't do this video without talking about this just because it's definitely one of my favourites and I think about it a lot. I also think the art style in this is absolutely lovely. It's just so cute and cartoony and I just can't go over it. It's such a great comic book, and it comes in such a cute form. It comes in a little envelope. Now let's talk about comic book series that I absolutely adore. This is Scott Pilgrim, and I've talked about this before. I reread these books in the summer. It's by Brian Lee O'Malley, who is a Korean-Canadian comic book artist. He used to be married to Hope Larson, but Now he is not. This is the third book in the series, and this one is signed, which is why I thought I'd bring it to show you guys, because I like showing off the fact that this is signed. And it's also a very short series, so that's something to keep in mind. It is a comic book series, and it's not as, you know, investment free as a standalone, so you do get invested in the characters and you do feel like you need to finish the series, but not to worry because it's only 6 books, and like I said, they're quite thin. Comic books are quite easy to get through, so I read them in maybe like 2 weeks over the summer. I read all of them. The third one and the sixth one are my favourites, but all of them are absolutely amazing. It's very cool because, again, it's like fantasy and like video games and pop culture based, but it's based in reality and it's not 100% aliens escapism fantasy world. So this is definitely one of my favourite comic book series, and I feel again like it's a really good place to start if you're just getting into comic books. If you've watched the movie, because this series was made into a movie called Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, then you should definitely check out the comic book series because they are absolutely awesome, and they go into a lot more depth about the relationships and the 7 evil ex-boyfriends and stuff than the movie does. If you want to hear me talk more about Scott Pilgrim, then I will link below and maybe on a card the book clubs where I talk about them. One of my all-time favourite comic book series is a manga series called Ranma 1-2, and this is by Rumiko Takahashi. She also did, oh my god, what was it? Inuyasha, that's the fucking thing. She wrote Inuyasha. Yeah. This is a really weird comic book series. This is the first one. There's 2 different types of covers. So this is the first one and this is the 13th. Yeah, this is the 13th. This is a very, very long series and I haven't actually read all of them yet because I think there's 30 something and I only have up to book 20 maybe? I'm not 100% sure. I need to buy some new ones. This series is really, really weird, but in like a really, really great way. Ranma is training martial arts and karate and all that kind of thing with his father in China. They've been traveling from Japan to China and they are training in this hot spring training ground, but it is a cursed hot springs and they don't know this until they fall into the hot springs, and now Ranma, when he gets splashed with cold water, turns from a boy into a girl, and the only way to change him back is to splash him with hot water. And Ranma's father also falls into the hot springs, but he turns into a panda when splashed with cold water and turns back into a human when he is splashed with hot water. And there are a few other characters in this as well who follow Ranma to the training grounds because they have a grudge on him or whatever, and they turn into things like pigs or geese or cats, and it's just very, very strange but very, very interesting. There's some really like dirty, funny jokes in it. It's kind of a little bit more of an adult humour. My dad read me this as a bedtime story when I was about 10 years old. I'm not sure how appropriate that was, but I don't care because it's a really great series and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you are into manga. It's a really, really good one. Like I said, it's a little bit more obscure and weird and funny than like traditional comic books, which is what I really like about it, but it does have the cool romance elements, the cool fighting martial arts elements, and some other just like great comedy moments in it. So I would definitely recommend this series. It's great. And once again by a female comic book artist, so 2 thumbs up. Another great series that was made into a movie was the Kickass comic book series. There are 2 comic books and I think 2 films. Actually, I think there might be 3 comic books now, but I only have Kickass 1 and Kickass 2. This is another case of the comic book goes into much more detail and is quite different from the movie, but I think that the first Kickass movie is awesome anyway, and the first Kickass comic is great too. This one is definitely adult subject matter. The movie was rated 18 in the UK, I think, so definitely not one for kids. It's very gory, as you can tell from the cover, and if you don't know what Kickass is about, if you haven't ever seen the movie or read the comic books, it's basically about a guy who wonders why real superheroes aren't a thing and he decides to become a real superhero, but there are other people out there who also want to be real superheroes, and he tries to take down mob bosses and obviously gets way out of his league. And the film's really great. It's got Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Chloe Grace Moretz in it, and Nicolas Cage. I think that this comic book is insanely gory, insanely badass, and it's another one of those ones that has a lot of really cool fighting scenes in it, and it's just a really fun comic book. The second comic book is great, but I wouldn't recommend going to see the second movie because frankly it's a little bit shit, to not mince my words. If you like comics about superheroes but you want to add a little bit of a twist on it, and if you like comics about really badass female characters, then this is definitely one for you. Another really great series, and this one is a little bit more child appropriate and also very fantasy based, is Akiko. So the first one in the series was Akiko and the Planet Smoo, and this one was just a standalone, and it set up the basic premises of the storyline that was going to happen. Akiko is a little girl who gets taken to rescue the prince of this planet called Smoo, who has been kidnapped. But it's really cool, there's lots of really fun adventures in this, and she makes lots of cool alien friends along the way. There's some really great characters. There's like a redneck character, a smart character. Poog is like the best character ever. He's like this little floating alien head. And then Gax the robot. Awesome. It's like a really great mix of characters, some really great comedy in it. And then after that book they did Akiko, and this was like a series, and this is like the first volume, and then I also have individual comic books of all the other episodes in this, which is awesome. And basically the premise of the Akiko books after that, I think these are called The Menace of Eliarelapor, but I'm not 100% sure, is the prince actually gets kidnapped for real. So Akiko actually has to go help the prince for real because he's been legitimately kidnapped. Once again, they have lots of fun adventures, lots of comedy, lots of references to literature. For instance, a lot of this comic book is based off of Gulliver's Travels. They go to a land where everyone is like really tiny and stuff, and again, just a really fun all-out fantasy comic book. If you really love kind of light-hearted fantasy books, then you definitely enjoy this, and it's another one that I just can keep going back to and keep rereading, and it's just really great. I have saved the best to last. This is my absolute 100% favourite comic book series of all time, and that is Bone by Jeff Smith. Bone is one of these comic books that my dad read me as a child, so I kind of have like a really emotional attachment to it, and actually this book itself has a lot of sentimental value for me because it survived a fire at my grandma's house, so it actually has like a shit ton of sentimental value. I don't know if you can really tell, but it has some smoke damage to the outer cover and stuff, like you can really tell on the bottom. It has smoke damage, kind of still smells like smoke. And I have this giant thing which has every single volume of the book. Let me check how many volumes there actually are. There are 9 books or 9 volumes in this entire book, and each of them has so many chapters. I think probably like 5 or 6 chapters each. This is again all-out fantasy. So the premise of this book is that these little creatures here are called bones. This is Phone Bone, he's the main character of the book, and then he has 2 brothers called Smiley Bone and Phony Bone. And Phony Bone gets them all run out of Boneville, which is where they come from, because Phony Bone is basically like a schemer and a scammer, and he runs like frauds on people and stuff. So they all get run out of the town where they were living, and they end up getting completely lost in the desert, and they end up going to the valley, which is the main setting of this book. And the valley is home to all these humans and then also all these weird creatures. These are rat creatures, this is what they are called. They're like the villain of the book, but the main villain of the book is called the Hooded One, and the Hooded One is basically like this evil creature person, and you don't really know who they are, and it's like a really big like conspiracy thing. Anyway, the Hooded One is like controlling the rat creatures and trying to take control of the valley, and then basically Bone falls in love with this farm girl called Thorn, and they all get dragged into this big war of like the valley people against the rat creatures and the Hooded One and this like army of darkness and the locusts and all this like really creepy crazy stuff. And I don't want to give away too much, because if I tell you too much more about the characters then I'm kind of going to spoil the story a little bit. But basically it's just a really great fantasy book, a mix of light-hearted comedy and romance and like really serious gory subject matter and just serious heart-wrenching subject matter. It's a really interesting story, and one that I would definitely recommend. I'm actually going to get a tattoo of some characters from this book because this is how much this comic book means to me. I don't know if it's just because it was read to me as a child, but I think that this is like the greatest comic ever written. Is that a little bit too much to say? I'm kind of obsessed. With Bone. It's so great. Oh, and you can also buy the individual volumes of this book. You don't have to buy this like giant thing, so you don't have to just invest in this giant thing and then end up hating the whole thing. Just so you know. Okay, that is everything for this video. I hope you guys enjoy it, and why don't you give me some recommendations of comic books that you really like down in the comments, because I'm always interested in finding out more comics and graphic novels to try out. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Tumblr or Instagram, they'll all be linked down in the description, along with everything that I'm wearing and what's on my face right now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!